like I've stated before, there's a lot of things that are misconceptions. Like, for instance, that Lockheed is a real aircraft manufacturer or a real anything. Lockheed is not, nor was the Skunk Marks. They laundered about $150 million or $1 billion through there, and pretty much all Lockheed or the Skunk Works were was basically a 5x8 room with a printer, pretty much where basically Nixon and JFK and some other people would pick up their checks, pretty much, and then they would go rent cars and flivver it away, as they say. Pretty much, what they would do is they would go to my real aircraft manufacturers in Russia, and they would go there and they would basically go to my factory, my Boeing factory, and they would pretty much sit in the cockpit of the jet and check to make sure that Chuck Yeager or somebody or John McCain wouldn't get tendonitis if he was using the throttle a lot. So you'd go and sit there and do this for about an hour or half an hour. Meanwhile, they were running all over the ship with cameras and trying to take picture of every single thing that they could possibly see. But you can't really see the workings of a jet engine. They'd even ask for people they'd be like, well, we want to check to see if our back would get hurt. So could you take that engine panel off so we could try lifting it up and putting it in place with the screwdriver? And they would film it of them taking off the engine cover, and they'd film all up in there, trying to see how the engines work. And then they would go and put it back, and they'd be like, no, that doesn't hurt my back. Nope, I think we're fine with that. And basically it was pretty much Nixon and John McCain's lie, and they were pretty much going to go and say that they had built the SR-71 and it was their ship, and that it was Lockheed that had built it, but it was actually Boeing. And like I said, they didn't actually ever build an SR-71. They say they built one, but all it was plywood and timber, because some of my guys snuck in there and took a look at it, and they said it's just a plywood and timber black painted shape of it, not even very very much like ours. And they said that and they did build one. They built an aluminum one. I was having them mess around with some aluminum, and they said, "Oh yeah, we got some aluminum that's strong enough. You can take the temperatures. It can do it." And they lifted off, and the thing started to bend, and started to crimple under the stress. They built the same exact shape out of everything, of aluminum, and then they tried to fly it like this R-71, and it went up there like this, and I think either the nose crimpled in or something like that, but basically it came apart and flew over upside down and crashed, killing the pilot and everything. It wasn't good enough to fly. They really didn't engineer it. They just built the parts out of aluminum and said, okay, it's good enough. Didn't even really make it thicker. I think they did try and account for some thickness, so they made it a little bit thicker, but anyway, they didn't really engineer it, so it came apart and crashed. They lost all three of them. Or two of them. They never flew. They say it flew, but it never flew. Anyway, that was Lockheed. They basically built an aluminum SR-71, and it couldn't take the stresses, and it buckled and crashed, or the stabilizer ripped off, or something like that. I don't know. All I know is that they said it turned upside down. They said it took off, looked like it was going to climb, and then it turned upside down and basically did this maneuver where it went. And what they think happened actually is the engine. What they think happened is they looked at it and did the thing, and they think what happened is as it was taking off like this, the engines did like this maneuver. The aluminum couldn't actually hold the engine steady, so as the engines thrusted, this one went up and this one went down, and basically caused it to roll over. Because the aluminum isn't as strong as the titanium. So one engine was able to just shift up like an inch or two, and the other engine came down an inch or two, and that caused it to just go like this really fast. And that's what the final report said, basically, is because my engineers took a look at everything that they did and went over everything, and they said, well, what happened is one engine went up a little bit and one engine went down, and that was caused by maybe something broke or something like that, or cracked or something like that. And I think they might have found some welds that cracked, but basically the engine tilted down, the other one tilted up a little bit, and just caused it to roll upside down and crash. And that's because they used aluminum and they didn't weld it good enough, or it couldn't deal with the stress of the engine. So it didn't even get a couple hundred feet off the ground. They may have restructured it and been able to take it up a little bit, but basically it was limited to a couple hundred miles an hour. It couldn't really get up there and get the real speed, because my jet gets up to like 4,000 degrees. because it's made of titanium and it can withstand it. They were actually going to try and melt down my SR-71 for the titanium in it, so they could do something with it, but my people wouldn't let them. There's only like 3 or 4 left, actually, or something like that. I only built a couple, though. So, yeah, they're one of a kind, and they're 70 or 80 years old. So, about 120 now. So, it's like a lost art almost. Like, they might have been able to do some stuff, because theoretically, I think they eventually did figure out how to weld titanium. They killed my scientists and killed all my people. And then I think Japan or somebody figured out the titanium welding, and they were finally able to do it for the Tomcats and some of the other ones. But basically, pretty much from 1920 on, like basically Nixon and JFK did this thing, and they were renting my house and basically killed all my people, tried to kill everyone else, and pretty much the Skunk Works and Lockheed is all a lie. It's just a ticket on a board. That's all it was. It might be something a little bit more substantial now, but probably not, because Boeing is one good aircraft manufacturer and all that. So basically they scammed like crazy and they planned to kill everyone. So anyway, so a lot of people checked it out and looked at the money and looked at everything else, and pretty much they were just paying themselves and basically blew it on stuff. Who knows what? $100 million or $150 million or so much money that they just, Nixon was doing the little dance, and so were a bunch of other people, and basically they blew $100 billion, pretty much. And hard to say where it went. So anyway, yeah, but all this Lockheed and Skunk Work money that never went to any engineers, that never went to anyone. It went to a camera crew and a couple guys, and mostly just Nixon and JFK and some other people. Anyway, maybe bought some torpedoes or something, or a sub. Who knows? Basically, they had like a couple $100 million, at least $200 or $300 million, pretty much. And they couldn't even print that much. There wasn't that much in circulation. So anyway, and basically they blew it on whatever. I don't know. So anyway, yeah, and they never should have been issued those checks either. So it was way too much money. I don't even know. It was just supposed to be a little bit, but basically, I mean, I don't even think they're good, really. I mean, I don't know. I mean, Lockheed wasn't really my company, nor was. And I think that what they were doing is the checks that they were printing was basically the stocks that they had sold. So a bunch of people bought into Lockheed, a bunch of people bought into this and that, and they were just basically selling the money that the people had paid, or printing out the checks that people had paid to invest in the company, and then just blowing it, or investing in other companies to try and take over the world or something. So anyway, yeah. So anyway, but basically they killed a bunch of Germans, and killed a bunch of Russians, and killed a bunch of other people, and then planned to nuke the whole planet. Oh well. Anyway.